The night my basement flooded, I was standing barefoot in the laundry room, holding a flashlight in one hand and a shop towel in the other. Like somehow either one of those things was going to help me stop hundreds of gallons of muddy stormwater from coming through my foundation. I remember hearing this low rushing sound first, almost like a creek moving too fast after heavy rain. Except Miller Run Creek sat nearly 300 yards behind my property, and I'd lived on that land long enough to know exactly what normal sounded like. That wasn't normal. Then the back wall groaned. Water started seeping through the concrete seams, and within maybe 15 minutes I was ankle-deep in brown water watching storage bins float across the floor like cheap pool toys. By sunrise, my basement had almost 4 feet of mud and stormwater in it, and by the time that whole mess was over, the people responsible ended up redesigning their entire subdivision, buying back 6 houses they'd already sold, and spending more money than they probably ever imagined, all because they thought gravity would cooperate with paperwork. My name's Caleb Mercer, and for almost 30 years I lived on 14 acres outside of Plainfield, Indiana, tucked into a stretch of land most people ignored because it sat low compared to everything around it. Back in 1996, nobody wanted it. Realtor practically apologized when she showed it to me. Said, cheap for a reason. Maybe she thought I'd walk away. I didn't. I grew up around farms. I knew drainage. Water doesn't scare me when it behaves like water's supposed to behave. The property had 3 old soybean fields sloping toward a shallow creek that cut across the back line. During storms, runoff spread out, settled, soaked in, then drifted naturally toward the creek. Slow and predictable. My house sat on the highest patch of ground, a little rise, maybe 6 feet above the rest, and in 28 years I never once had standing water anywhere near the foundation. Heavy rain? Fine. Spring melt? Fine. Thunderstorms that knocked power out half the county? Still fine. That's why when Briarstone Development bought the farmland north and west of me in 2020, I paid attention. You spend decades on one piece of land. You notice every machine that rolls through. First survey trucks, then utility markers, then bulldozers, then signs. Fox Hollow Estates, 182 homes, curved streets, streetlights, landscaping, retention pond. I went to the planning meeting at Town Hall mostly because I wanted to hear their drainage engineer explain what happened when all those absorbent farm fields got covered in concrete. Room was packed, folding chairs squeaking, stale coffee in paper cups, projector humming. Their engineer, a guy named Nathan Heller, stood up front in a gray suit pointing at renderings like he'd already sold the future. He talked runoff calculations, stormwater detention, controlled release. Everything sounded polished. Then he pointed at a blue-shaded drainage map, and there it was. My property. I raised my hand. He looked annoyed before I even spoke. I asked, where does overflow go if that pond fills faster than expected? He gave me this practice smile and tapped the screen. Natural drainage path. Same pattern that's existed historically. Right through my land. I asked, and your positive runoff won't exceed what those fields already produce? He nodded immediately. Actually below pre-development discharge rates. A couple people in the room looked relieved. I didn't. There's a difference between a guy reading calculations and a guy who's watched storms move across the same ground for 30 years. Still, town approved it. Construction started. And for a while everything looked fine. Road crews paved streets. Framers stacked houses one after another. Retention pond got dug on the northwest corner. Massive earth berm. Concrete outlet pipe. Fencing. By late spring the place looked like a postcard subdivision. Then June hit. Classic Indiana thunderstorm. Hot all day, humid enough the air felt sticky, then clouds rolled in around dinner. Lightning. Thunder. Rain so hard the gutters overflowed. I stood on my back porch watching the retention pond from a distance. At first it filled exactly like you'd expect. Water climbed. Wind pushed ripples. Then the level got high enough that I expected discharge through the outlet. Didn't happen. I narrowed the flashlight beam. Still nothing. No steady release. No drainage. Then suddenly water crested the top edge of the berm. And my stomach dropped. Because detention ponds aren't supposed to spill over the top. Not unless something's very wrong. Within seconds a sheet of muddy water tore down the slope like a broken dam. Across open ground. Straight toward me. I took off running before I even thought about it. By the time I hit the back porch, water was already racing through the yard. The basement windows rattled. Then came that sound. That awful rushing sound. My neighbor Ellie Carson called while I was dragging boxes upstairs. Caleb, my crawl space is filling. I told her mine too. Neither of us even needed to say what we were both thinking. It was the pond. By midnight, I was soaked through, hauling ruined photo albums and extension cords out of basement water while thunder rolled overhead. At 1 a.m, I called Briarstone's emergency line. Straight to voicemail. Left another. Nothing. Around 9 the next morning, I finally got a call back from their project manager, Monica Reeves. I told her exactly what happened. She cut in halfway through. Our stormwater basin is engineered for a 100-year rainfall event. I said, then why did it overflow over the berm? Silence. Then, that shouldn't be possible. I remember laughing not because it was funny, just because I was standing in mud with ruined drywall behind me, and hearing shouldn't be possible felt ridiculous. I told her, well, come look at it. She didn't. A week later, I got a formal letter from Briarstone's attorney. Heavy rainfall. Act of God. No admission of liability. No compensation. Nothing. I read that letter sitting at my kitchen table while industrial fans dried out what was left of my basement. And I remember staring out the back window toward that pond thinking one very clear thing. Rain didn't flood my house. People did. And if Briarstone wanted to pretend none of it was their fault, then fine. I was done asking questions. I was about to start proving answers. The first person I called wasn't a lawyer. It was a hydrologist. A friend of mine from years back gave me the number for a guy named Russell Bennett out of Lafayette. Older guy, calm voice, sharp as a tack, kind of man who looked like he'd rather study topographic maps than talk to another human being, and honestly, that was exactly what I needed. He came out 3 days later in work boots and a faded Purdue cap carrying a clipboard, survey rod, and enough equipment to make my backyard look like a highway project. We spent 6 hours walking the property. He measured grades, checked soil, ran elevations, studied the basin from every angle. Didn't say much, which somehow made me trust him more. Around sunset, he stood on the embankment staring at the outlet structure, then looked over at me and finally said, well, there it is. I asked, what am I looking at? He pointed to the concrete pipe. Too small. Then at the berm. And lower than approved. I thought I misheard him. He checked his notes. Nope. Berms built roughly 7 inches under permitted elevation. Capacity's off. I just stood there staring. He kept going. The outlet pipe's undersized too. Based on approved drawings, this basin should discharge a lot more volume than this. I asked him straight. So if we get another storm, he looked me dead in the eye. It overtops again. That report hit my inbox 48 hours later. 27 pages. Photos. Drainage calculations. Comparisons against approved county plans. Russell didn't sugarcoat anything. The pond wasn't functioning as designed. The embankment elevation had been lowered. The release structure couldn't handle expected flow. And because of both issues, runoff concentrated harder and faster toward my property than natural drainage ever would have. Exactly what I'd known standing in my flooded basement. Only now it was documented. I emailed Monica Reeves at Briarstone. Attached the report. Simple message. You built this wrong. Here's proof. Fix it before the next storm. 3 days later, I got a response from their attorney. No greeting. No apology. Just legal language and one sentence that still makes me laugh. Mr. Mercer's property has historically existed in a naturally vulnerable drainage condition. I read that twice. Then pulled county floodplain records. My land. Zone X. Minimal flood risk. I printed everything and called an attorney. Howard Langley. Plainfield native. Water damage litigation. Kind of lawyer who somehow looked relaxed even while saying things that made corporations nervous. I handed him Russell's report. The attorney letter. Photos. Insurance estimates. He flipped through everything without rushing. Then leaned back. Caleb, you're not crazy. Best sentence I'd heard in weeks. He tapped the report. This isn't weather. Then tapped the attorney letter. And they just put their denial in writing. We filed suit against Briarstone Development, Horizon Civil Engineering, and the site contractor Miller and Sons Excavation. Negligent design. Negligent construction. Property damage. Hydrologic diversion. Whole list. Briarstone answered exactly how you'd expect. Denied everything. Claimed extraordinary weather. Claimed I bought risky land knowingly. Claimed their system exceeded code. Basically blamed clouds, gravity, and me. Then September arrived. And with it another storm. I'll never forget that afternoon. Sky turned dark green. Wind bent the tree line. You could feel static in the air. Ellie called before the rain even started. Caleb, you watching the pond? Yeah. It already looks high. By the time thunder hit, Russell was actually there with me. He'd come out to inspect after another concern I'd raised. We stood under my back awning watching rain hammer the subdivision. Water streamed down streets, driveways, curbs, into that basin. And then exactly like before, nothing came out the outlet. Russell muttered, unbelievable. Then the water topped the berm. Again, same direction, same violent rush, straight downhill. Ellie's crawlspace flooded. My basement took on water. And this time the house east of me, a retired couple named Frank and Melissa Donovan, got hit too. Frank stood in his driveway, soaked through, yelling toward the subdivision. You gotta be kidding me. Honestly, I felt bad for him. Then he looked at me and said, you suing these people? I nodded. He said, good. We're joining. That changed everything. Now it wasn't just one irritated landowner. It was 3 damaged properties, 3 families, 3 insurance claims, and 1 stormwater basin with a growing paper trail. Then discovery started, and Briarstone's confidence vanished fast. Howard subpoenaed internal emails, inspection logs, construction change orders, engineering correspondence. At first they fought every request, dragged deadlines, objected constantly. Howard kept pressing. Then one Friday afternoon he called, voice lighter than usual. Caleb, you sitting down? I said no. He said, you might want to. He emailed me a chain between Briarstone executives and Miller & Sons. One line from the contractor. Lowered berm grade to reduce fill cost. Should still be fine. Another reply from a Briarstone project executive. Proceed. Need to stay under revised budget. Then the one that really mattered. An engineer at Horizon writing. Outlet sizing may require reevaluation under revised runoff assumptions. Meaning they knew. They knew before construction finished. And signed off anyway. I sat there staring at those emails and honestly felt this strange calm. Like weeks of frustration suddenly sharpened into certainty. It wasn't bad luck. It wasn't misunderstanding. It wasn't one weird storm. They made a budget decision. And my basement paid for it. Depositions were wild. Monica Reeves came in polished and prepared. Howard walked her through timelines, reports, meeting notes, then asked when she first learned the berm was lowered. She hesitated, adjusted papers, tried wording around it. Howard slid the email in front of her. Silence. Then she admitted she'd seen it before completion. The engineer didn't go much better. Howard asked if he certified the basin. Yes. Asked if certified plans reflected actual elevation. Long pause. Then, no. Frank Donovan nearly laughed out loud. Judge shut him down. Worth it. By spring of 2024 we were in trial. County courthouse. Wood-paneled walls. Old benches. Packed room. Half the subdivision showed up, because by then rumors were everywhere. Homeowners were nervous. Some angry. Some clearly wondering whether they'd bought into a lawsuit disguised as a neighborhood. Russell testified first. He broke down runoff calculations plain enough everyone understood. Explained pre-development absorption. Post-development concentration. Outlet restrictions, berm elevation, showed maps, photos, even animations. Then Howard asked one clean question. Dr. Bennett, in your professional opinion, what caused Mr. Mercer's flooding? Russell didn't blink. A defective stormwater basin that was knowingly built below approved specifications. You could feel the room shift. Defense attorneys tried hard. Tried blaming historic drainage. Tried calling storms unpredictable. Tried painting my land like some inevitable swamp. Then Howard stood, walked to the jury, and said something simple. Mr. Mercer lived there 28 years. Pause. No flooding. Then pointed toward Briarstone. They arrive. Pause. 2 floods in 1 summer. That landed. Hard. Defense lost momentum after that. Jury paid attention. People in gallery leaned forward. And I sat there realizing no matter what happened, the truth had finally gotten bigger than their paperwork. By closing arguments, Briarstone looked tired. Really tired. Their lead attorney still tried. Talk standards. Permits. Rainfall unpredictability. County approvals. Howard got up last. Didn't pace. Didn't dramatize. Just looked at the jury and said, nature did exactly what nature always does. Then pointed to the drainage plans. The only thing that changed was what these defendants built. The jury left. Courtroom emptied. I stood outside under bright Indiana sunlight with Ellie and Frank and Melissa. Nobody talked much. Just waited. Almost 4 hours. And every minute felt longer than the storm itself. Then the bailiff opened the doors and called us back inside. When the bailiff opened those courtroom doors, nobody rushed in. Funny thing, after months of legal filings and depositions and arguments and sleepless nights, the final few steps back to our seats somehow felt heavier than everything that came before. Ellie walked beside me with both hands clasped tight. Frank looked like he was trying real hard not to pace. Melissa kept staring straight ahead. Across the aisle, Briarstone's executive sat rigid and pale, legal pads untouched. Monica Reeves wouldn't even look toward us. The jury filed in. 12 people. Ordinary folks. A retired teacher. A mechanic. A nurse. People who'd spent 2 weeks listening to engineers argue about drainage while looking at photos of ruined drywall and floodwater and pretending not to notice half the subdivision whispering in the hallway. The foreman unfolded the paper, and for a second the whole room went dead quiet. Then he read, liability against Briarstone Development, liability against Horizon Civil Engineering, liability against Miller & Sons Excavation, joint responsibility, damages awarded, $134,000 to me, $98,000 to Ellie, $93,000 to Frank and Melissa. And then the part nobody expected. The judge ordered immediate corrective redesign of the entire stormwater system at Briarstone's expense. You could actually hear someone in the gallery whisper, "Oh wow." Monica shut her eyes. Their attorney leaned over fast, started scribbling. Frank gave me one quick look like he wanted to yell, but knew better. Howard just sat there calm as ever and whispered, "That's a very expensive afternoon." And honestly, after everything, I laughed. Not loud, just enough. Because there's something almost surreal about hearing a courtroom confirm exactly what you knew standing ankle-deep in muddy basement water at 2 in the morning. Outside the courthouse, reporters were already waiting. Apparently by then the case had gotten enough local attention to become neighborhood entertainment. One guy shoved a microphone toward me, asked if I felt vindicated. I told him the truth. I'd rather have had a dry basement. That made the evening news. Briarstone filed appeal almost immediately. No surprise there. They argued county approval protected them, said corrective redesign was excessive, claimed damages were overstated. Howard warned me appeals take time. He was right. Months passed. Leaves changed. Winter came. And every time weather radar showed rain, I still found myself looking toward that basin, like my body remembered before my brain did. Then in January the appellate court ruled. Unanimous. Judgment affirmed. And the language was brutal. Developers have an obligation to ensure stormwater systems do not exceed natural drainage patterns on a neighboring land. Clear. Direct. No wiggle room. At that point, Briarstone had no more cards left. And that's when the real pain started for them. Because fixing the basin turned out to be way uglier than anyone expected. Their consultants brought in new engineers, survey crews, environmental teams, county inspectors. For weeks, trucks lined the road. The conclusion? There was only one workable solution. Expand the retention basin another 3 acres. Raise the berm nearly 4 feet. Install a larger reinforced outlet system. Add emergency spillway infrastructure redirecting overflow east toward protected county drainage. Basically rebuild the whole thing the way it should have been done the first time. There was just one problem. Actually 6 problems. 6 houses already built and sold sat directly on the expansion footprint. I remember standing at my fence while crews measured stakes through backyards. Kids' swing set in one. Fresh sod in another. A barbecue grill. Planters. Porch furniture. Perfect little suburban homes. And every one of them had to go. Briarstone started buyback negotiations. Premium offers. Relocation assistance. Closing bonuses. People were furious. Understandably. A couple homeowners blamed me directly. One man walked up while I was checking mail. Said, "You happy now?" Didn't yell. Honestly, almost worse. Just tired and angry. I told him no, I'm really not. And I meant it. Because he didn't cause any of it. Neither did his kids. Neither did Ellie. Or Frank. Or me. Briarstone made decisions. Everyone else got dragged through them. Eventually, all 6 homes sold back. Demolition crews came in. By summer, the whole stretch looked like open construction again. Total buyback cost just over $2.4 million. Stormwater rebuild another $900,000 and change. And that doesn't count legal fees, insurance claims, engineering consultants, delays, bad press. One county commissioner joked Briarstone spent more fixing drainage than paving the roads. Nobody from Briarstone laughed. The first big storm after reconstruction hit late August. Heavy one too. Thunder all night. Sheets of rain. Exactly the kind that used to keep me awake. I made coffee around midnight and stood on the back porch. Wind blowing sideways. Lightning flashing over Fox Hollow. Water filled the basin. Rose higher. Higher. Then the outlet kicked in exactly like it was supposed to. Steady release. Controlled. No overtopping. No rushing wall of mud. Emergency spillway stayed clear. Drainage redirected away from us. The creek carried runoff downstream exactly the way it had for decades. By morning my basement floor was dry. Completely dry. I walked downstairs barefoot just to be sure. Concrete dry. Storage shelves dry. Water heater dry. Not a single damp corner. I just stood there for a minute. Quiet. Coffee in hand. And I'll be honest, after 2 years of fighting, that empty dry silence felt better than the verdict. A couple weeks later, Ellie came by with pie. Frank brought beer. We sat out back watching sunset hit the rebuilt basin. Frank raised his bottle and said, "Most expensive puddle in Indiana." Ellie nearly spit out her drink laughing. Even I had to admit, he wasn't wrong. Fox Hollow eventually filled up again. New families moved in. Kids on bikes. Dogs barking. Normal neighborhood stuff. And for the most part life settled down. But every now and then somebody still brings it up. At the grocery store. Town meetings. Online. Some people say Briarstone got exactly what they deserved. Others say the buybacks punished homeowners who never did anything wrong. A few still insist storms are storms, and everybody should have just moved on. Maybe. Maybe not. All I know is this: for nearly 30 years water followed nature and left my home alone. Then somebody changed the landscape to save time and money and assumed no one downstream would notice. Turns out I noticed. And once the truth came out, gravity had a way of making sure every shortcut rolled right back uphill. So I'm curious what you think. Did Briarstone deserve every dollar they lost? Should the court have stopped at damages? Or was forcing a full redesign the only fair outcome once innocent families started paying for somebody else's bad decisions? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. And if you enjoy real stories about land disputes, neighborhood conflicts, and the moments ordinary people push back when powerful people think they can get away with anything, hit like, subscribe, and stick around. Because trust me, this town still has stories.